Alright guys, so we're gonna be watching Epic History's coverage of the Russian Civil War. Yeah, I'm not gonna try to pronounce that name. I'm sure he'll pronounce it, but I don't feel like butchering, names right now. So point is, this actual series is, I think, what, 2 parts, or I don't know how many parts. Point is, I've decided I'm just gonna cover it all in 56. It's only 56 minutes. Have we covered longer video? Well, yeah, we've covered movies on this channel, so you know what? Let's just do it. Let's just watch this entire series and see how it plays out. It's gonna be interesting to learn about the Russian Civil War that took place, basically around, I think maybe even during World War I. And, yeah, if you add this in the numbers of just normal World War I as well, it's just like so much death happened in Russia. But fortunately, Russia is known for having a lot of people. So, yeah, that's the thing about, like, these, really big, countries with a huge amount of people, like China, for instance. Like, when they get into a civil war, so much death happens. Like, and I just know this is gonna be insane. And while we did cover the Revolutionary Wars in France, and the revolution in general when I was in high school, we did cover the Russian Revolution, but we never got into the specifics of the Civil War itself, like the battles fought. Basically, we know it was the Red Army versus the White Army, and the Red Army won. That's the very surface level plot of what happens. It's gonna be nice to see the intricacies and what happened. If I remember correctly, when we covered this event in the oversimplified videos, he said that while the White Army had the larger land area, like, I forgot the map, but they had more vast land, the Red Army had the industrial heartland, and overall, I think, an edge because of that. Again, that's from Oversimplified. If that's wrong, go check out Oversimplified's video. You'll see what I mean about the Russian Revolution / Civil War. But either way, it's gonna be interesting to see how this goes. So let's get to it, shall we? Let us watch the Russia Civil War, all parts, by Epic History.
November 1918. In Western Europe, the 4-year slaughter of World War I is drawing to an end. But across the former Russian Empire, a new conflict has broken out. A civil war that rages from Central Europe to the Pacific and will claim an estimated 9 million lives. Lenin, the Bolsheviks, and their new Soviet Republic battle for survival against their many enemies, collectively known as the Whites.
I really love we have footage of, these events and these people. It's just I don't know, it's just something cool to me, just seeing it, because the older we go back in history, we usually just cover it through illustrations or paintings, but here we have straight up, actual photos of what's happening in videos. It's just something it's just looking into the past, even more, more immersive, if you would, which is something I really like.
The Whites' great hope, their newly appointed supreme ruler of Russia, Admiral Alexander Kolchak.
Kolchak. Let me hear that
Russia.
again.
Admiral Alexander Kolchak.
Kolchak. Kolchak. Kolchak. Let me hear this one more time. I'm so sorry.
Ruler of Russia, Admiral Alexander Kolchak.
Kolchak. Okay, I'm sorry. I feel like I'm gonna say this guy's name a lot in this video. I would like to at least not completely butcher it. But alright, Alexander Kolchak. Let's see what you do. Oh. He's gonna lose. Because like I said, we already know the outcome. The Bolsheviks win. communism, Soviet Union, etc. Man, we're about to watch this guy lose, but let's see how he goes.
He is a war hero, a man of duty and discipline, who believes above all in service to the motherland. Millions look to him to crush the Bolsheviks, avenge the murdered Tsar, and save Russia from chaos and collapse. This is the extraordinary tale of the life and death of Admiral Kolchak, Russia's only supreme ruler. The Arctic Ocean, 1900. Russian scientific vessel Zarya sails east on a voyage of discovery to the outer fringes of the Russian Empire. The expedition leader is Baron Eduard von Toll, a renowned Russian explorer and geologist. He intends to explore the Arctic Ocean and discover Sannikov Land, a near-mythical landmass rumored to lie north of the Novosibirsk Islands. Among his crew, 26-year-old Naval Lieutenant Alexander Vasilievich Kolchak. Kolchak had been a brilliant naval cadet, but service aboard the Petropavlovsk, one of Russia's newest battleships, had bored him. Kolchak had a passion for scientific discovery and oceanography, and a thirst for adventure. When Baron Toll asked him to join his expedition, he leapt at the chance. The dawn of the 20th century is an age of intense imperial rivalry and scientific exploration. Russia, under the autocratic reign of Tsar Nicholas II, seeks to modernize and learn more about its vast eastern territories. Toll's expedition is part of this process, and proves as dramatic as any tale in the annals of polar exploration. Toll was a deeply ambitious leader and expert geologist, but knew little about the sea. His ship, Zarya, was in poor condition and ill-suited for long voyages in the ice. Nevertheless, the expedition spent 2 years exploring the frozen coast, ice floes, and islands of Russia's Arctic north. On one occasion, Toll was nearly drowned by a walrus. Kolchak was pursued by polar bears. In May 1902, frustrated by his failure to find Sannikov Land, Toll took an extremely dangerous decision. With Zarya trapped in sea ice, he set off with 3 men traveling by sled to reach Bennett Island. Zarya broke free of the ice a month later and set off to collect him. But facing impenetrable ice and running out of coal, Zarya had to turn back. Toll and his team were stranded. Lieutenant Kolchak had distinguished himself as a key member of the expedition and a loyal comrade to Baron Toll. He was determined their leader should not be abandoned. Returning 3,500 miles overland to St. Petersburg, Kolchak helped to organize a rescue mission.
Find the lowest priced health plans at healthforcalifornia.com. Get a quote.
His plan seemed insane. To reach Bennett Island without a ship, using only sleds and small boats. But in the absence of better options, his proposal was approved. Kolchak postponed his own wedding to return to the Arctic and begin preparations.
Holy crap. Alright, so we're kind of getting a look into the man's character. Obviously loyal, dutiful, brave. So very good qualities off the bat. And yeah, just overall, like, dude literally postponed his wedding to go rescue this guy. Like, alright, those are really good Admiral qualities. No, no pun. Okay, let's watch the video.
On the 5th of May 1903, Kolchak's 17-man rescue expedition set off across 600 miles of snow and dangerous, shifting pack ice. Travelling by a combination of dog sled and whaleboat, it took 3 grueling months to reach Bennet Island, where they found no sign of Baron Toll. Just an abandoned campsite, some scientific observations, and a note. "Departing south today," it read. "We have provisions for 14 to 20 days. All are in good health." The note was dated the 26th of October. It was 9 months old.
Oh, crap.
No sign of Toll or his 3 companions was ever found.
Dang. Alright, like, man. Reminds me of, like, the Roanoke disappearances, you know what I'm talking about? Where, like, people were left there, but then the settlement, you know, they were basically gone. And it's, like, one of the great mysteries, like, oh, what happened to those people? Like, you know, kind of, I don't know why that reminded me of that, but yeah, just, that's interesting.
Despite its failure, Kolchak's daring rescue mission won him national fame and the Imperial Geographical Society's highest award, the Constantine Medal. It also won him a nickname, Kolchak Polyarny, Polar Kolchak. Returning to Yakutsk in January 1904, Kolchak learned that Japan had attacked Russia's Far Eastern base at Port Arthur, and war had been declared. Here was an opportunity for action, and the service to the motherland that Kolchak craved. He immediately requested a transfer to the front. But first, he met his fiancée, Sofia Fyodorovna, in Irkutsk for their postponed wedding. 4 days later, he left for the Far East. The world expected Russia, a great imperial power, to easily defeat Japan, an Asiatic upstart, according to racial views of the time. But instead, the war proved a frustrating and humiliating experience for Russia's military, with devastating defeats on land and sea, leading to a political crisis at home.
Yeah, like I've said before, Japan was kind of frightening. Like, from the era they start industrializing all the way to World War II, the Japanese are so vicious and frightening. Like, you could read about some of the war crimes they committed in, like, World War II in China. It's unhinged. And, but man, they were formidable. Like, in just a short time, how quickly they industrialized and quickly showed themselves to be a threat to the rest of the world, right? Even Russia, which is, you know, one of the great established powers, like, got clapped, essentially, by them. And, it just goes to show you just how behind Russia kind of was in some areas. And it kind of was a wake-up call, right, to their military. Especially like in World War I as well. They were not doing so hot. So, yeah, they were having issues. And, yeah.
There was little Lieutenant Kolchak could do to change the tide of war. bottled up with Russia's Pacific Fleet in Port Arthur. He nevertheless served with distinction and courage. As commander of a small, aging destroyer, his main role was laying mines at sea. In December 1904, one of his mines scored a major success, sinking the Japanese cruiser Takasago. But the repetitive nature of his duties bored Kolchak, and he was dogged by ill health. In December 1904, the Japanese got close enough to Port Arthur to shell Russian warships with their land-based artillery. Ship by ship, Russia's Pacific Fleet was sent to the bottom. Days later, Port Arthur surrendered. Kolchak was among the 25,000 Russian prisoners, though as a sick and wounded officer, he was repatriated a few months later and returned to his wife in St. Petersburg. The war had been a demoralizing affair for Russia, and for Kolchak personally, though he received several medals for his leadership and bravery.
Listen, if you've been in a car accident, don't call an attorney. Use this AI app instead. That's what I did. And
(1914), the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand in Sarajevo sparks an international crisis. Austria-Hungary accuses Serbia of responsibility for the crime and plans.
So yeah, we covered Epic History's World War I series, so I'm not going to speak much about it. You want to hear my thoughts about it? Feel free to jump over to that series. We've covered it already. Let's just see what Kolchak did during this time.
To retaliate. This causes Nicholas II to mobilize Russia's army to support Serbia, a Slavic ally. In response, Austria's ally, Germany, declares war on Russia. Soon, all the great European empires are at war. That summer, as the Russian army blundered towards disaster in East Prussia, 39-year-old Captain Kolchak took command of a destroyer flotilla in Russia's Baltic Fleet. The previous year, he'd been described in an official report as an outstanding officer in every respect. Firm character, well-mannered, very disciplined. Kolchak was, in every way, a model Tsarist officer.
Okay, so Kolchak just seems to be the greatest man in the world. I mean, in terms of like what we saw him do in the beginning, trying to rescue Baron Toll and whatnot, obviously it seems like his conduct is almost perfect. I mean, we don't know if that'll change. I mean, we still have the rest of the video to go, but so far he's giving off a very good, likable vibe. I'm liking this guy. He seems, like I said, dutiful, brave, honorable, disciplined, basically what you kind of expect from a soldier slash leader. So, yeah, let's see if any negative traits come up. Like I said, I'm almost afraid of praising him too much because, like I said, I don't know this man. I don't know if things change dramatically as the years and the conflicts wage on, but so far, very likable guy, kind of like Belisarius, who we also covered from Epic History. I like Belisarius, very likable, dutiful, all kinds of that. So, Kolchak, I mean that as a compliment, because Belisarius, I think everyone likes him, you know?
Now in the Baltic, he and his flotilla would enjoy notable success, despite the overwhelming superiority of the German Navy. Once more, mine warfare was the Russians' favored tactic. In the early days of the conflict, Kolchak's flotilla alone laid 6,000 mines in the Gulf of Finland. These operations effectively shielded the Russian capital from attack by sea. Kolchak went on to direct a series of bold night operations, laying mines on the approaches to enemy ports, including Memel, Danzig, and Kiel.
Oh my.
Kolchak's...
Okay, wait. Okay, first of all, securing the capital, great move. Already a great move on his part. But man, look at how far he got. Making it to even enemy, like, ports. Daring. Like I said, we don't cover much naval warfare on this channel. Mainly we've only covered land. Only land warfare and conflicts. But, this is interesting to cover something new and finally get into naval warfare. Like I said, it's also just something I personally haven't looked much up. I've looked up mainly just land warfare, so this is new. And I'm looking forward to learning and seeing more of this, since I'm not all that familiar with naval conflict and how wars completely waged on the sea. And yeah, just overall, dang, beyond impressive already.
And Kiel. Kolchak's courageous leadership won him more medals, and a meeting with Emperor Nicholas himself. In 1916, Kolchak was promoted, becoming the youngest admiral in the Russian Navy, with a new role, Commander-in-Chief of the Black Sea Fleet. He arrived at his new headquarters at Sevastopol in Crimea in July. He was accompanied by his wife Sofia and their 6-year-old son. The couple had by now lost 2 children in infancy. Across the Black Sea, Kolchak faced Russia's old adversary, the Ottoman Empire, and Bulgaria. Kolchak quickly adopted an aggressive strategy, laying mines off the enemy's coast and providing naval support for Russian operations near the Caucasus. His great hope was to launch an operation to capture the Bosporus Strait, which would be a decisive blow against the Ottomans, and open up a sea route to Russia's western allies. Russia's first Naval Infantry Division was created for this task and placed under Kolchak's command. But the operation would never happen. It remained a dream beyond Russia's capabilities. Nevertheless, Kolchak's success in the Black Sea made him famous once more, a celebrated war hero at a time when Russians were desperate for good news. Because from every other quarter, the news was of defeat, chaos, and turmoil.
Hey everyone, big heads up, Paleo Valley's running a sale on all their meat sticks right now. You can get 30 sticks for $36.
Yeah, he strikes me as incredibly competent. That's the thing. And we love competence, you know, in our leaders, you know? And yeah, to be winning and doing actually well at a time where Russia was infamously not doing well is very impressive overall.
March 1917. On the streets of Russia's capital, renamed Petrograd, there were protests against food prices and the huge sacrifices of the war. It was the start of a revolution. The news took a few days to reach the Black Sea Fleet, 1,000 miles to the south in Crimea. Admiral Kolchak, determined to prevent any unrest within his fleet, issued a proclamation. I order all officers of the Black Sea Fleet and land forces entrusted to me to continue firmly and unwaveringly to fulfill their duty to the Emperor and Motherland. The very next day, Nicholas II abdicated the throne. For Kolchak, it was a bewildering blow. Duty, discipline, loyalty to sovereign and motherland were all he knew, and he foresaw chaos ahead. In contrast, most of his sailors celebrated the news of revolution in Petrograd. Their life was one of grim conditions and brutal discipline. Finally, here was a chance to overturn that hated regime. In Sevastopol, sailors elected their own Soviet council and formed their own committees. Initial demands included renaming every ship which carried an imperial name. Discipline and respect for authority began to collapse. Kolchak made...
So this is interesting in that, yeah, he seems incredibly loyal even to the Tsar. You know, so we're usually, when we cover this point in Russian history, we mainly cover just, you know, the Soviets and the rise, and basically most people didn't like the Tsar by the end, right? But it's interesting to see him, Kolchak, just, you know, kind of be like stunned by that, because he's like, he's loyal, like really loyal, like, you know, and now it seems like a dangerous position, because now the sailors are gonna be like, hey, cool, we're gonna change things, and it's like, are they gonna target him? Let's find out, but I'm wondering if it's gonna be an issue right now and how he's gonna deal with it.
Maintained a high tempo of military operations to keep his men occupied, but privately talked of facing the disgrace of a senseless mutiny in wartime. For 3 months, he held the fleet together, with firm leadership and careful compromises with his sailors. But Bolshevik agitators were at work amongst the men. They wanted the capitalist war ended immediately, and Tsarist officers like Kolchak removed from command. In June, the crew of his own flagship, the Georgy Pobedonosets, confronted the admiral. They demanded that all officers be stripped of their sidearms and swords. To avoid bloodshed, Kolchak agreed. But rather than hand over his own ceremonial sword, he hurled it into the sea. Even the Japanese, our enemies, let me keep my weapons, he told his men.
What a baller move. And yeah, I think overall he didn't really have much of a choice. When everyone mutinies, it's like, they might just kill me if I, you know, like, but at least he still, like, has dignity when he's stepping down, and he's, in a weird way, he still has some sort of power doing this. So yeah, overall, I really like this guy so far. I hope that doesn't change. I hope he's another Belisarius who I just like until the very end.
You will not have them now. A few days later, Kolchak resigned his command and travelled to Petrograd. His wife and son remained in Crimea. He would not see them again. Kolchak had already publicly denounced the reforms of Russia's new provisional government, which he believed were destroying the military. Now, the story of his defiance in the face of mutiny made headlines across Russia. Kolchak's reputation among Russian conservatives was sky high. They even wondered if he might be the military dictator the country needed to restore law and order. Such whispers alarmed Russia's provisional government. The new Minister of War, Alexander Kerensky, may even have seen Kolchak as a potential rival. So he met with Kolchak and informed him that he was to be sent abroad as part of a military mission to the Western Allies. In truth, it was what Kolchak himself described as a form of political exile. That summer, Kolchak sailed via Norway to Britain, then to the United States of America. He met with President Wilson and senior US naval officers. But plans for meaningful military cooperation between Russia and the Allies were clearly going nowhere. In San Francisco, Kolchak accepted an
Yeah, it seems like, this was just a political exile. They just got rid of him because he's competent. He, obviously isn't bowing down to how the new changes, so he's dangerous, essentially, in a way, to his rivals. So, yeah, kind of sucks, though. It's like he's stuck in these circumstances as literally all that he's known is falling apart. It's like, yeah.
invitation to return to Russia, to enter politics, as a candidate for the Cadets, Russia's last non-socialist political party. But in Japan, en route home, he received shocking news. There had been a second revolution in Russia. The Bolsheviks had seized power. Lenin was now in charge. Kolchak was appalled by the October Revolution of 1917. He despised Lenin and the Bolsheviks, who'd soon rename themselves the Russian Communist Party. The chief cause of his hostility was Lenin's plan to make an immediate peace with Germany. Like many Tsarist officers, Kolchak regarded Russia's commitments to her World War I allies as sacred. Lenin's negotiations with the Germans were both dishonorable and treasonous. Kolchak's course of action was clear. As an admiral of the Russian fleet, I considered our allied commitment to the war against Germany to remain in full force. The only form in which I could continue my service to the motherland, which was now in the hands of German agents and traitors, was to join the war effort against Germany on the side of our allies. Kolchak offered his services to the British. They initially planned to send him to Mesopotamia, but soon backed him for a much larger role. With fighting still raging on World War I's Western Front, the Allies were desperate for Russia to rejoin the struggle against Germany. This meant removing Lenin.
That means helping him, I guess. Okay, what I'm guessing is they want him to take a powerful leadership, maybe overthrow these guys, so in a way Russia can join again. Okay, so that's what I'm guessing is about to happen. So Kolchak, I will say though, like, definitely very honorable. He's a man of his word. He's bound to it, and it goes even beyond himself. It goes to Russia as a whole. Like, hey, we had a treaty with our allies. We need to go back and help them. Though I will say, I kind of like the war effort was going really bad for the Russians. So getting out of the war and fixing themselves, probably the better move, I would say personally. Sorting themselves out, like, you know, because Russia has enough internal issues. Getting straight up thrown into the politics of World War I, I think made those issues even worse. So I will say, I feel like I'm getting the impression that if Kolchak had won, and if he had been in charge, it kind of would have been similar to Tsarist Russia, in that he would try to honor it because that's all he's kind of known his entire life, and he's very bound to it. So I think it would kind of be a sort of return to form. I mean, granted, the Tsar, I'm pretty sure, as we all know, dies, so I'm not sure if he would take the title of a Tsar, or like, again, like, I'm wondering. Obviously, I'm just speculating right now, but I think a lot of things would kind of go back in order, you know what I mean? So yeah. Again, I think I kind of agree with the Bolsheviks ending this war and getting out of World War I. Obviously, the Germans don't fully comply. They end up invading a lot of Russia, and then making, you know, the Bolshevik government, agree to a very humiliating peace, you know, but, I do agree with their mindset of getting out of World War I. Russia has its own issues to deal with, like, you know, so yeah.
And the Bolsheviks from power, who that July added to their crimes by executing Emperor Nicholas II and his entire family at Yekaterinburg.
And that's kind of the thing, though. It's kind of like with the French Revolution, you know, murdering the king and his family. Like, obviously it's a horrific thing to do. You know, the way the Romanovs were killed was horrifying, and I feel awful. Like, look, Tsar Nicholas was a bad ruler. He was garbage. He takes responsibility for a lot of Russia's suffering, and, you know, overall, blame on him. But, like, his family, though, like, they murdered everyone. And, like, I was reading some excerpts about the way they went about it. They did not go out in a nice way. The children, like, oh gosh, like, but that's the thing, though. It's like I brought up the French Revolution. I think it was, Saint Just who said a king must either rule or die, and that was a big argument for killing the king of France. And it's kind of the thing, though, is that you leave the king alive, people are gonna rally to him, even if he intends it or not. You know, so long as he's alive, people like Tsarist loyalists are all gonna rally to him, and there's a chance that they'll fight to restore him. So I get where, like, when revolution happens and these, like, you know, people usually are like, okay, we're gonna murder the monarchs now, like, in their mind, self-preservation, keep the enemies from rallying behind something or someone, but, like, at the same time, I get where the Bolsheviks are coming from that mindset, right? But it's like, man, I feel bad for Tsar Nicholas and his family. like, oh my goodness, what an awful way to go. Like, really brutal. It's really disgusting, you know, the way they died.
Therefore, as civil war engulfed Russia, the Allies would back the anti-Bolshevik forces, known as the Whites, against the Bolsheviks, the Reds. The British now put forward Admiral Kolchak as a man who could unify and lead White Russian forces in the Far East, a proposal that met with widespread support. In September 1918, Kolchak arrived in Vladivostok. Here he learned that anti-Bolshevik groups had recently met in Ufa and established a new provisional all-Russian government. This was effectively a continuation of the provisional government that had been swept aside by the Bolsheviks. Therefore, it had little support from Kolchak and other conservatives, who blamed the provisional government for leading Russia into chaos in the first place. That month, the advance of Bolshevik Red Army troops forced the provisional government to abandon Ufa and retreat to Omsk. Kolchak travelled 2,800 miles by train to join it.
Hate YouTube ads? You need this Chrome extension. I feel like I just found a Google cheat code. This Chrome extension lets...
On the 5th of November 1918, after much discussion, he agreed to become the provisional government's Minister of War and Navy. 2 days later, Kolchak formed a general staff and went to the front to assess the situation.
Yeah, so Kolchak has kind of become this, like, leader slash rallying point, and it's interesting that even the Allies kind of wanted him for that, because he offered his services to the Allies. Like, I respect him for still sticking by his beliefs, and it's like, well, I don't know how Russia's doing things, but I still owe something to the Allies because of, you know, the treaties Russia made. So he, like, went to, what, Britain and offered his services, he said. Like, I admire that a lot. That's just honorable. Another trait he has, he's very honorable. But now he's, you know, now he's basically been propped up to kind of be the man in charge of the Whites, right? It seems. And basically be their hero. So yeah.
Across Russia, the military situation was incredibly complex. White Russian forces were scattered on Russia's periphery. General Boldyrev commanded 180,000 provisional government troops on the Omsk front. General Denikin's volunteer army in southern Russia had around 50,000 troops. The northern Russian government, a small White Russian enclave, had just 6,000 troops. They were supported by Allied contingents of varying sizes, mostly in support and training roles. The Allies' most important contribution was sending arms, ammunition and supplies via Russia's seaports. Then there was the Czechoslovak Legion, about 50,000 strong, on the Omsk front. The Legion's story was an odd one. The unit, made up mostly of Czech volunteers, had been fighting alongside the Russians on the Eastern Front against the Germans. When the Bolsheviks took over and made peace with Germany, the Legion had received permission to travel by rail to Vladivostok, to then travel by sea to France, to rejoin the Allies. But the Bolsheviks then changed their mind and tried to disarm the Czechs, who fought back. The Legion was now stranded in Russia, but held key points along the Trans-Siberian Railway, the crucial east-west transport and supply route. To further complicate the picture, Russia's civil war raged alongside several national wars and independence struggles in Poland, Ukraine, Lithuania, and elsewhere. Russia's white forces, fragmented both geographically and often politically, faced the gigantic resources of Lenin's Bolshevik Russian state, controlling Russia's major cities.
Yeah, so it seems like the White Army, obviously not unified, and I mean that in the most literal sense. They are separated. Look at them, different areas. They are separated, and also there's inner conflict, which I think even Oversimplified mentioned, that they had issues. So, again, it's that division. When you're kind of divided, you get conquered, you know? Divide and conquer, if you would. And, like I said, I'm pretty sure oversimplified said the Bolsheviks had the industrial heartland or the advantage in that regard. Those resources, even though on paper they don't occupy a large portion of Russia, at least in compared to the whites, they have the most important cities, I'd say, and yeah, resources, and they are completely unified. So yeah, you can kind of see some like advantages slash disadvantages from that assessment.
The gigantic resources of Lenin's Bolshevik Russian state, controlling Russia's major cities, industrial centers and transport hubs, with around 800,000 troops under its command. It was a daunting prospect. The challenging military situation did nothing to ease political tensions among the whites. They included at one extreme left-wing socialist revolutionaries who'd led the February Revolution. At the other extreme, right-wing conservatives who wanted to restore the monarchy. This latter group had no more time for socialists and provisional governments. They believed only a strong dictator could save Russia now. On the 18th of November, they made their move. 300 Cossack troops rode into Omsk and arrested all the socialist revolutionary delegates they could find. The provisional government was abolished by its own executive, the Council of Ministers. It then moved to elect a new supreme ruler of Russia, who would wield complete dictatorial power. The man they chose was Admiral Alexander Kolchak, a proven leader with a brilliant military record, widely respected, in close contact with the Western Allies.
Yeah, honestly, seems like the most logical choice. I'm not sure if there were any other options, but yeah, Kolchak just seems like the obvious choice, right? Like, at least I think. Then again, I don't know if there were anyone else who could be considered for the job, but yeah.
Above all, he was a man who shared their vision, that only a return to law and order could save Russia from chaos. Kolchak himself had not sought the position of supreme ruler, believing others were better suited. But...
And he's also not power hungry, seems a bit humble. More character traits that make me like you, Kolchak. Oh boy, it's sad this dude's gonna lose. Like, I hate that I know that. But I guess it's the journey, right? It's not the destination, it's the journey to get there that's more important. And, yeah, just, I'm liking this guy so far. Like I said, I haven't liked someone so overwhelmingly since Belisarius. So, yeah, Kolchak, you're up there in terms of people I like, you know? Just, yeah.
Duty had called, and he would answer. In November 1918, a coup d'etat among white forces in Omsk brought Alexander Kolchak to power as supreme ruler of Russia. The 44-year-old admiral now wielded authority equal to that of a Tsar, with an absolute veto over all new laws.
Your health is your biggest asset. Health for California offers...
Despite his sudden elevation, Kolchak did not surround himself with luxury, nor move into a palace. He continued to rent a townhouse in Omsk and kept a careful eye on his expenses. He was joined in Omsk by his devoted mistress, Anna Timirova, who also worked as his translator. His wife and son, who he'd not seen in more than a year, were still in Crimea. They would soon travel to Paris, where many White Russians were now living as refugees. As supreme ruler, Kolchak faced challenges on a scale difficult to comprehend. And it was soon clear that he was neither a natural nor a sophisticated politician. His manner was stiff and severe, his sentences short and to the point.
So he lacks that sweet talk, essentially. He's a military man, you know? And the thing is, like, yeah, military and politics are two different realms. There are some people who can do both, as we've seen, but also, you know, at the same time, Kolchak, yeah, doesn't strike me as the smooth-talking politician using sweet words and, you know, all that. He strikes me as a straight-up, dutiful, blunt leader, kind of, like I said, military man. And I don't think that's gonna go well with these politicians, right? He's gonna try to run things as a military man, not now as basically an almost czarish ruler, if you would. So, yeah, I'm not. It seems like it might cause some issues.
If he failed to get his way, he became frustrated and angry. He clung rigidly to his own conception of honor, both for himself and for the motherland.
It seems like that rigidness is a flaw now. Like I said, I've been praising a lot of his great qualities, but now that he's stepping up to a role that it seems like he's not adjusting well to, his rigidness and sense of honor might cause him more issues. You know, he seems a bit too rigid and not flexible. I guess we'll see if he can sort of adapt, but this seems like this might be an issue caused by his own character.
He was, however, extremely hard-working, well-mannered, and could be personally kind and generous. Kolchak's first priority was to have his position as supreme ruler recognized by the Russian people, the army, and other White Russian governments. Equally importantly, he needed recognition from the Allies, primarily Britain, France, and the USA. The previous week, the 11th of November armistice, effectively brought World War I to an end. And though fighting continued in many parts of Europe, the Allies would now be able to send far greater resources to support the Whites. However, the Allies no longer needed Russia to rejoin World War I. Now they were more interested in regime change, replacing the Bolsheviks with someone less hostile and more reliable. Initially, therefore, the Allies were alarmed by the unexpected coup that brought Kolchak to power. He immediately set out to reassure them. In his first proclamation, "I will not go down the road of reaction or the ruinous path of partisanship. My main objective is to build a combat-ready army, to defeat Bolshevism and establish law and order, so that the people can freely choose the form of government they wish." Whether Kolchak really wanted democracy in Russia would never be put to the test. In White-controlled areas of Russia, the response to the new supreme ruler seemed broadly positive. Conservatives welcomed the prospect of a strong leader after so much chaos. But the reaction was not long in coming. The left-wing groups that the coup had forced from power, the Socialist Revolutionaries and Mensheviks, had not given up. They convened their own constituent assembly at Yekaterinburg, where Nicholas II and his family had been murdered by Bolsheviks just 4 months before. This assembly refused to recognize Kolchak's new government and called for resistance. In response, the supreme ruler ordered local Czech troops to arrest all its members. Several were later murdered during a revolt in Omsk, in which several hundred socialist revolutionaries were killed. Kolchak had shown himself unafraid to use his new dictatorial powers, and such firm action helped to shore up his position. On the other hand, the socialist revolutionaries, his allies in the fight against the Reds until a few weeks before, were now among his most bitter enemies. They accused Kolchak of wanting to make himself Tsar, which, they declared, made him an even greater threat than the Bolsheviks.
The socialists, man. And that's the thing, the Bolsheviks are for the most part working completely to just get rid of the opposition. The Whites have this issue that they were basically, it started off the Bolsheviks versus everyone else, right? But now it's like the Whites, which encompassed everyone else, is now splintering because even they weren't completely behind one vision like the Bolsheviks are. So now you're seeing the issue, right? Now there's, yeah, the division is never a good sign with these things, you know?
Elsewhere, White forces accepted Kolchak's authority. General Yudenich in the northwest, Marushevsky in the north, and General Denikin commanding the Volunteer Army in the south. Areas directly under Kolchak's control were effectively run by military government. Local councils could not be relied on due to their support for socialist revolutionary and Bolshevik policies, such as land reform. Instead, the Whites banned trade unions and returned nationalized industries to private ownership. Wherever they encountered opposition, White Russian forces were ruthless. When an uprising broke out in Yenisei, Kolchak ordered that any village offering armed resistance was to be destroyed, burned to the ground, the men shot, everything of value seized. Hostages were to be taken, and if locals cooperated with Bolshevik partisans, they were to be shot. In the process of crushing the Yenisei revolt, White forces executed an estimated 10,000 Russians, all in direct consequence of Kolchak's orders. The Bolsheviks were just as merciless in territory they controlled. Some historians differentiate between Red and White Terror during the Civil War. The Red Terror was directed from the top, an official policy of mass murder on class grounds. The White Terror was reactive, improvised, and usually carried out by local commanders. It made little difference to ordinary Russians, who suffered untold miseries in this war, and died.
Holy crap. Yeah, at that point, it's like, dude, they're all killing us. Like, red or white, right? It's like, ugh. I mean, I can get it, like, hey, we don't want people in our sphere of influence helping the enemy, but yeah, at the same time, you're still killing civilians. That's not a good thing. Dang.
In unimaginable numbers. In economic terms, Kolchak had one advantage over the Bolsheviks. He controlled 2/3 of Imperial Russia's gold reserves, captured from the Bolsheviks, now stored at Omsk, 490 tons in all. By late 1918, there were several Allied expeditionary forces in Russia to assist the Whites. More important than troops were the arms, ammunition and supplies they were sending, particularly Britain. But the support came with strings. Kolchak was informed by telegram that the Allies expected French General Maurice Janin, based in Vladivostok, to take overall command of all Allied and Russian soldiers. Kolchak rejected the idea outright, declaring he'd rather have no foreign aid than submit to such a proposal. Eventually, a compromise was reached. General Janin would command only the Czechoslovak Legion and some other small Allied contingents. Most of these would be held back to guard supply lines and railways. While some historians believe Janin's wounded pride would later have bitter consequences for Admiral Kolchak.
Are you passionate about auto or diesel? At Universal Technical Institute, you can train hands-on and learn.
It seems insane that the Allies were like, okay, we're putting this French guy in charge now. He has to be in charge of everything. I don't know, the last French guy to fight in Russia didn't end up so well. Napoleon. But fun history jokes. But yeah, like Kolchak seemed like the best leader. Plus, like, how would like the Russian troops react to, again, some random French dude taking control of everything, right? Like, yeah, it was good for Kolchak to put his foot down on that one, maybe. I don't know, apparently there's gonna be issues later. That's some foreshadowing, so I don't know. But it seems a little unhinged that the Allies said, we're trying to make that demand, you know?
The war against the Bolsheviks was always Kolchak's overriding focus. His dream, the recapture of Moscow and Petrograd. From the provisional government, he inherited advanced plans for a major offensive aimed at Vologda. The goal was to break through to White forces near Arkhangelsk and gain access to Allied aid arriving via the northern ports. The offensive began on the 27th of November. The White Yekaterinburg Army faced the Third Red Army, which had been ordered to hold a 250-mile front, while suffering from serious shortages of fuel, food, and warm clothing. The attack broke through. The Reds were soon retreating with heavy losses, and on the 24th of December, the Whites took the city of Perm. It was a major victory for Kolchak's forces. They had taken 30,000 prisoners, 120 artillery guns, 1,000 machine guns, and 9 armored trains. Eager to avenge this humiliating defeat, the Red Army launched a counter-offensive in January. But after small gains and huge losses on both sides, the attack bogged down. The capture of Perm filled Kolchak and his generals with hope, and they organized a new, large-scale offensive for the spring of 1919. Their ambitious plan was to attack towards Vyatka and Saratov, break through the overextended Red Army center, and envelop Moscow from north, east, and south. The offensive began in March, and their ambitious plan was to attack towards Vyatka and Saratov, break through the overextended Red Army center, and envelop Moscow from north, east, and south.
Super ambitious. Essentially, attack from 2 fronts. Yeah, overextend the Reds, break through the center, break them. Yeah, that would require just like an all-out assault that needs to be like carefully done, because this is multiple like fronts right here, right? Like done and ambitious. I could definitely see the logic in it, but I have a feeling it might not work.
The offensive began in March, and soon White forces were advancing rapidly towards the Volga River. By the end of April, they'd advanced around 200 miles, capturing territory rich in industrial and agricultural resources, and threatened the cities of Kazan, Simbirsk, and Samara. French Prime Minister Clemenceau and British Secretary of State for War Winston Churchill were among those who sent congratulations to Kolchak. For the Whites, Moscow itself finally seemed within reach. And with military success and renewed international backing, Kolchak's government had never looked stronger. The days of the Bolsheviks, it seemed, were numbered. Lenin and the Bolsheviks were deeply alarmed by Kolchak's success. But extraordinary measures had been taken, which would soon enable them to fight back. People's Commissar for Military Affairs, Leon Trotsky, had overseen the doubling in size of the Red Army within a year. Now 1.5 million strong, it was backed up by the full resources of the state, mobilized under a new policy of war communism. In April, Lenin declared Kolchak enemy number one of the Soviet Republic. All on Kolchak became the Bolsheviks' new slogan. The Red Army's Eastern Front received two...
Leon Trotsky, I think it's infamous for his, well, infamous isn't the word, but he is known for his great organization skills, and also for being kind of a hero for the Soviets pre, Stalin taking control, and, he got killed. Obviously assassinated, but, well, he was in Mexico, but, yeah. And you kind of see that some of his skill in rallying just a new 1 million man army to just fight back. It's just... Well, it was good while it lasted, but Kolchak just seems like it's all downhill from here now.
Two new brilliant commanders, General Mikhail Tukhachevsky and Commissar Mikhail Frunze. In April 1919, they launched a counter-offensive with 80,000 troops. White Russian forces were soon in rapid retreat. On the 9th of June, Ufa fell, a crucial stronghold of the Whites. At the height of this crisis, Kolchak received a potential lifeline, an offer of military support that might turn the tables on the Reds. Finland, ruled by Russia for more than a century, had declared its independence following the Bolshevik Revolution. Finland's regent, Carl Gustaf Mannerheim, now offered to attack Petrograd with 100,000 troops. In exchange, he wanted Kolchak to recognize Finnish independence. Kolchak flatly declined. Even in this desperate...
Whoa. Dude, just say yes. Oh, Kolchak, I said his character would be his... He has so many great qualities, but he's too rigid, and he's like, no, you're part of Russia. You were there, and you will remain. He probably just sees them as rebels. Like, dude, Kolchak, you need to say yes, dude. This is like a golden opportunity. Just say yes. Oh no, Kolchak, no. No, you're too rigid. You're too... Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness, dude. You can't... This is like a golden opportunity. They're like, hey, we'll just attack it right now for you. Just let us have our independence.
Power. He would not accept any dismemberment of Russia's historic empire.
Oh my goodness, dude. Oh, Kolchak, man. That seems like such a waste. That's like a golden opportunity. That's like a lifeline right there. I can't believe he just said no.
By August, the Red Army had crossed the Tobol River. But Kolchak had a plan. He was sacrificing territory for time to rest his troops and regroup. As Supreme Commander-in-Chief, Kolchak would regularly visit frontline units to see conditions and speak with the men. He would bring extra rations of coffee, sugar and tobacco to lift morale. He spoke always of duty and the motherland. But small gifts and rhetoric could not compensate for his forces' increasingly dire situation. They were desperately short of supplies, including transport, fuel, clothing and weapons. A crisis partly caused by massive corruption and theft behind the lines. While the return of Tsarist-era discipline, which included flogging and beating soldiers, created further discontent. Desertions were rife, particularly...
Okay, yeah. Obviously all the issues are now piling up. First of all, the whites not being completely unified, Kolchak being way too rigid, way too attached to Tsarist Russia, with the flogging obviously creating even more problems. He's not adapting. He wants things completely back to the way they were, and most people weren't happy with the way things were under Tsarist Russia. And yeah, I can't believe he just said no to Finland. What the heck, dude? They were like, hey, you want us to help you win the war? Like, I think we could actually, like, completely get them off guard, and we just jumped them. Dude was like, nah, can't risk Russia's integrity. I'm like, dude, at this point you need it. Like, I'm sorry, I'm shocked still. Oh, Kolchak. Like I said, he has so many great qualities, but it seems like some of them are now, like, not helping the situation.
Among new conscripts from the peasantry, who had little reason to love the whites. In private, Kolchak was increasingly under strain and unable to control his temper. He looked visibly exhausted, and at 44, his hair had turned completely grey. The rumours of morphine addiction were probably malicious gossip, but the supreme ruler had become erratic and agitated. That August, Kolchak threw himself into planning a counter-offensive to support General Denikin's thrust on Moscow. Great hopes rested on its outcome. The attack began on the 1st of September. Initial indications were excellent. Kolchak's forces smashed through the Third Red Army, taking thousands of prisoners, advancing more than 100 miles, and driving the Reds back across the Tobol. But the great encirclements Kolchak had planned, that were to annihilate Red forces on the Eastern Front, failed to materialize due to a lack of cavalry. At the Tobol River, the Reds were able to dig in and re-establish a defensive line. Kolchak's troops, exhausted by their advance and weakened by their own losses, could go no further.
EVE Online is a vast unit.
October 1919. Along the Civil War's Eastern Front, the ground shook with explosions as the Red Army launched yet another major offensive. The Whites fought stubbornly, but when the Reds captured bridgeheads across the Tobol, the decision was made to begin a strategic withdrawal. General Denikin's advance on Moscow also came under fierce counterattack. Everywhere, the Reds were advancing. Omsk, Kolchak's capital, was under threat. Kolchak wanted it held to the last man. "If we lose Omsk, we lose all," he declared. But the speed of the Reds' advance left no time to organize a proper defense. The city was hurriedly evacuated on the 10th of November. Russia's gold reserves were loaded onto a Red Cross train and moved to safety, Kolchak having dismissed French General Jeannin's invitation to place them under international protection. "I do not believe you," Kolchak told him. "I would rather leave the gold with the Bolsheviks than give it to the Allies." His words revealed how far trust had broken down between himself and General Jeannin. Kolchak hoped to establish a new defensive line along the Ob River, 370 miles east of Omsk. But by December, this line too was crumbling. A breakdown in relations with the Czechoslovak Legion was the final straw. These Czech troops controlled the Trans-Siberian Railway, the vital artery for the movement of troops and supplies. The Legion's officers now decided the evacuation of their own men would take priority over the movement of Kolchak's forces and supplies. Kolchak himself was travelling east on the Supreme Ruler's train, accompanied by the gold reserves. His destination was Irkutsk, where he planned to establish his new headquarters. Around him, the country was in chaos. White forces were in full-scale retreat. The government's authority had collapsed, and a typhus epidemic was spreading fast. Large areas were controlled by Bolshevik partisans or bandits. Famine loomed. On the 25th of December, at Nizhny Udinsk, 280 miles short of Irkutsk, Kolchak's train was halted by Czech troops acting on General Jeannin's orders. He was held for 2 weeks with limited communications as chaos engulfed Siberia. While he waited, Bolsheviks and socialist revolutionaries launched a revolt in Irkutsk and took control of the city. Now, even Kolchak's escape route was closed.
Dude, that sucks. It all fell apart so quick. It's like they had 2 instances where they just pushed the Reds far, only to get pushed back even further. Man, everything fell apart, dude. That sucks. Like I said, there's a lot I liked about Kolchak, but I think rigid is the word I'd use. He was too rigid in some areas, not completely adept in other situations, and yeah, you just kind of see it like all fall apart. Like, yeah, that sucks.
Kolchak was now completely isolated. Military disaster had swept away his forces. The Allies had lost patience with his failure to compromise. His authority had been destroyed. On the 4th of January 1920, at the insistence of his own Council of Ministers, Kolchak issued his last decree as supreme ruler, promising to resign in favor of General Denikin. With enemies on all sides, Kolchak planned to escape south into Mongolia, with the 60 officers and 500 men still under his command. He announced that no man would be compelled to join this enterprise. He would accept only volunteers. At dawn the next day, of his 500 soldiers, only 10 remained. Kolchak saw the game was up, and on the advice of his officers, placed himself under the protection of the Czechoslovak Legion. On the 10th of January 1920, Kolchak's train finally left for Irkutsk under Czech protection. "These allies will sell me," Kolchak predicted to one of his generals. Sure enough, on arrival in Irkutsk 5 days later, Kolchak was handed over to the city's new Socialist Revolutionary Council. The Czechs claimed they had no choice. It was the only way to ensure their own safety as they escaped the country. But some Russian historians later claimed it was to cover up their own theft of Russia's gold reserves, which had been traveling with Kolchak. This is almost certainly a myth, though legends about Kolchak's missing gold endure to this day. The interrogation of Admiral Kolchak began on the 21st of January, 1920. He answered questions willingly, avoided implicating his subordinates, and took full responsibility for the actions of his government. But the Bolsheviks had now taken control of Irkutsk, and he knew his prospects were not good. He, after all, had instructed his own officers to shoot communist prisoners. The civil war must be merciless. Either we shoot them, or they shoot us. But then...
To a degree, I kind of agree with that. The Bolsheviks were ruthless, but still, you know, I don't know. Man, that's so interesting, I think, everything that's going on. You know, basically being handed over. It's like, yeah, he basically lost everything all in one foul swoop, and yeah, basically just a prisoner now.
Suddenly, the hope of rescue. Several thousand troops loyal to the Admiral began a desperate advance on Irkutsk, aiming to free Kolchak and other white officers held there. They battled their way to within 5 miles of the city, but they were massively outnumbered and outgunned. It was a gallant but doomed rescue attempt, and Kolchak's fate was now sealed. In the early hours of the 7th of February, on the orders of the Bolshevik Military Revolutionary Committee of Irkutsk, Admiral Kolchak and the last Prime Minister of his government, Viktor Pepelev, were taken from their cells and led to the bank of the Angara River. An order was given. Platoon, against the enemies of the revolution, fire! The 2 bodies were pushed through holes in the ice and never seen again.
Rip Kolchak, man. That's... Overall, I think he had a very good character. I liked a lot of his traits, but I saw, in a way, some of those traits were his undoing. And, dude, what would have happened if he had said yes to Finland? Like, I don't know why, I'm so up on that. I'm like, dude, you need all the help you can get, but I don't know. I don't know if they would have won, but that just seemed like a wasted opportunity. Overall, I do feel really bad for the dude. I don't know. Like, I don't know. Overall, GG Kolchak, you had a really great run, dude. Well, maybe great's a bit strong of a word, but, you know, good game. You had an alright run there.
With the execution of Admiral Kolchak, the Whites' last pretense of unified national leadership was over. 1920 saw their defeat on all fronts. Western allies evacuated their few remaining troops from Russia. And though fighting continued in corners of the new Soviet Empire for 3 more years, the ultimate victory of Lenin and the Bolsheviks was no longer in doubt. It came at an appalling cost. The Russian Civil War was one of the deadliest conflicts in history. with an estimated 750,000 military deaths, 75,000 executions, 5 million civilian deaths from famine, and 3 million deaths from a typhus epidemic. The career...
That is insane. That, oh my goodness. That also coming straight up after World War and during World War I is just the most insane thing ever.
Of Admiral Kolchak, Russia's only supreme ruler, and for more than a year the world's great hope for defeating Bolshevism, had ended in total failure. He had faced extraordinary challenges and shown himself a leader committed to duty, discipline, and his own imperial vision of his Russian motherland. He was a skilled naval commander and charismatic figurehead, but was also rigid and inflexible.
That's what I've been saying, rigid, you know, unflexible, a bit too uncompromising, like, yeah, a bit too stubborn in some areas. But overall, he had a lot of great qualities. I do feel bad for the dude. Like, that sucks the way he went, you know?
Unable to compromise or forge the alliances he needed to succeed. Under the Soviet regime, Admiral Kolchak's name was disgraced. An enemy of the people, a would-be tyrant in the mold of the Tsars, a traitor with no known grave. Today, a cross stands at the presumed site of his execution, and a memorial stands in Irkutsk. For some Russians, Kolchak remains a romantic, tragic figure who battled for an old empire and stood by his sense of duty to the bitter end. Thank you as ever.
Yes, that was a really great series, and I do agree. Yeah, like, there's a lot to him. Overall, I really liked him as a person. I liked his values, he stood by his principles, and he seemed to have integrity, you know, to those principles. So, I can't question them. I feel like he had a pretty solid character for the most part when it came to duty and honor and standing by what he believed in that respect. And he even took responsibility for the Whites' actions, and the Whites were brutal towards the people, as you could see, like, in a way the Bolsheviks were too. So, you know, you can definitely point at instances where the White Army was not all that great either, and I kind of like that it says he took responsibility for everything. Like, that's also something I think there's a lot to admire about him, you know. Overall, a very interesting man, and I like that because I never bothered learning about, nor was I taught about the more intricacies of the Russian Civil War, so this was beyond interesting to learn about. And yeah, just another wonderful series by Epic History. Well done once again. I've really liked learning about Russia, and there's gonna be more. We're gonna learn more about Russia in the future, no doubt. But this has been really cool. I really like this, guys, and I guess I'll see you all in the next video. Bye, everyone.